Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is Ash Quest, and sometimes we don't have a quest to go on. Sometimes the mayor's nephew is not trapped in the skeleton dungeon over yonder hill. Finally. Sometimes the heroes are just gathered around the table at the tavern, sharing drinks and stories, or gathered around the fire to warm their mitts while the blizzard outside rages on, and there's nothing to do. Sometimes the magical cat does not need taken down from the ancient elder tree. The cat is actually a shapeshifter, the tree is actually a dryad. The quests run dry as Zargon wrings his hands, plotting, but not yet deciding on action. So what do we do in those instances? Recently, I've been talking about getting into Warhammer Underworlds, which is not a square grid-based dungeon crawler, but a hex-based arena game. Don't let those words scare you off. Or do. I mean, it's a far cry from what we usually do here on the channel, but you know me. I'm not about the tournament and the meta. I'm about the inspiration. I'm about studying game mechanics and tying together systems in subversive ways to have fun. I'm about game design. I'm about homebrew. And boys, this one's going to be interesting. And we'll get into what all of that means here on the channel as far as taking mechanics from the core systems of this game and translating them into other games, most likely dungeon crawler type games, and game design and development for things like homebrew surrounding this game to turn it into something a little bit different than what it was intended to be, something other than an arena battler. For those of you who are my fellow dungeon crawl aficionados and you're not interested in the slightest in arena games, I would still counsel you to stick around, see how this is played, and see what kind of ideas you can draw from it. That's the sort of thing we're going to do right away as we deep dive into what exactly is Warhammer Underworlds, and we're going to start with the game that started it all. We're going to start with Shadespire. For those of you out there who are playing the Underworlds games currently or have played them for any length of time, this is not going to be an addition to the many creators who are more focused on building the armies and the decks and establishing a meta of what works best. This is not going to be the channel that is going to give you advice on how to build a good army for tournament play. It never is about that here. We're more focused on the fun than we are the competitive nature of any given game. At least I definitely am. But if you look at this stuff through a competitive lens, but you're okay taking a break from that to kind of hang out and relax here with me in homebrew land, then you could do that as well. So without further ado, let us go to the game. Now, I have gone down a bit of a rabbit hole, and for you Warhammer Underworlds players out there who are here to kind of review my work and make sure that everything I'm saying is true and to check me on points that I'm wrong about, I mean, please do so. Keep it civil, but please do so. But I just have one question for you guys who have played Warhammer Underworlds, maybe since the beginning, or maybe you have just gotten into it recently, or maybe you came in about halfway and have been enjoying it / not enjoying it. Interesting point, we'll talk about that, ever since. And my question is, you guys live like this? I'm no stranger to Games Workshop's business model. Their business model is, for every game and every game system that they produce, we'd like your money, and we'd like lots of it. Not for nothing. They have pretty high quality products. They have amazing artists, they have great sculptors, and they pour heart and soul into game systems, and they stand firm with those systems. They're legendary. But in this video, we are going to explore what is Warhammer Underworlds, and we're going to do so from a dungeon crawler perspective. Now, this stack of boxes next to me is not some weird flex to show you that I have spent money on a bunch of core games from this system. In fact, kind of the opposite, and you probably know, if you've been watching the channel for a length of time, that I am a deal hunter. I love thrifting. I like going on eBay and getting stuff either secondhand or discounted, or if there's a minor tiny flaw, I will rescue that game from the clutches of its current owner and give it a new home. What you see next to me here is not a stack of new core boxes. It is a stack of mostly incomplete boxes that I was able to score at heavily discounted prices because I have a plan, and I'm going to follow my plan rigorously to collect as much Warhammer Underworld stuff as I possibly can, and I will explain why I got bit by that bug in this video also. But just to kind of go over, the Brutes and Bandits is a core alliance box. The Ember Guard, that's a full core game. I did get it discounted, but it's a full core game, as is Shadespire, which is at the very bottom of this stack. Nether Maze and Harrow Deep. And this Top Stack, which is Winter Maw without its box, and Arena Mortis from Beastgrave. Beastgrave is brand new. I got it for a very good price off of eBay. And those other three are not those game systems, or they are, but they're without miniatures or some other component. Very cheap, like $15 for one of those core systems without its miniatures, because I can just get the miniatures in an alliance pack or in a combination of alliance packs. We'll go over all of that. But this video is going to be very casual. We will jump over to the other camera now and explore what exactly Underworlds is, what is this business model, why are there so many core games? And we'll start at the very beginning. So what do the heroes do when there are no quests on the quest board and they're bored sitting around the tavern table drinking ale? Well, one of them pipes up, probably the dwarf, and says, "Let's go plunder Shadespire." Shadespire is the very first core game in all of this. We've got multiple things to look at sort of briefly today. We're not really going to go down the entire rabbit hole, but I will explain the structure of releases, which in and of itself is a rabbit hole. It's very interesting. Now, if you're just getting into Warhammer Underworlds today and you want a core game recommendation today, that's Emberguard. Emberguard has superseded everything else, and if you are somebody who is serious about tournament play and the meta and only going into your friendly local game store competitions with legal models and rules and all of that stuff, Emberguard is what you're going to start with. This is the only core game, as of the time of this video, that you can bring into a contemporary official tournament setting, but there are character expansions, or I should say, there are warband expansions. And with this, there is a game expansion, which you can't play on its own. You need some components from this, as I understand, to play it, but it basically brings you 2 more armies and a new map. And the maps are very important parts of all of this as well. Unlike other war games or skirmish games or arena-based games, at least most of the Games Workshop ones that I've seen, Warhammer Underworlds comes with its own hex-based maps, which are also a part of the whole legal, not legal, phased out, etc. Just to break in here real quick, one of the best ways to support the channel is through the Patreon. Not for nothing, I've got all kinds of quests, I've got posts, I've got videos on the back end. There's even a year-long merch loyalty program. Subscribe and you'll get merch every 3 months. You can get this lovely Nilbog mini print, this Ash Quest mini print, this amazing Ash Quest mug, which has the Ash Quest shield on one side and Nilbog in Goblin mode on the other. And at the end of the year, a t-shirt commemorating your survival. Thank you for your consideration. Back to the video. So I've got these amazing deals on so many Underworlds products because people become enraged that they can't bring their then current edition of Underworlds to tournament now because it's been superseded by something else, some new set of core rules, or their armies were just fine even for multiple what we're calling seasons, which are actually these core box releases, until they were phased out by something else that happened. Some armies have been just perfectly legal for almost the beginning of this whole run. And yes, I am a guest in this realm. I'm not an authority, so you don't have to come on here and actually me on anything in particular. But like I said, if you're here to correct me and share in my excitement and love for Warhammer as a whole, it's kind of a platonic love with Age of Sigmar, but I miss you, old world. Yes, by all means, again, give me gentle corrections. That was oddly fetishy. Let's continue. Shadespire is the first core game. I'm trying not to rustle the boxes around too much because I actually have put together the models. And my gosh, that is an experience in and of itself. You'll get warbands with Underworlds, and you don't get to mix and match your warbands. They are put together with their own sets of abilities and potential and restrictions that make choosing your warband a process in and of itself. And it all started with Shadespire. Now, this is not something that you can bring into a tournament these days. This is something that you can play with its core rules, its rules as written officially at home with friends, like any other board game system. And that's why I'm amazed that so many of these older core games were just being given away practically on platforms like Mercari, eBay, and Marketplace, because they're games. They're full games. They're just like anything else. Am I going to practically give away Warhammer Quest Silver Tower because Darkwater is coming out? No, absolutely not. They're 2 games in their own right. Now, I realize the business model wants you to have this idea that you got to link these 2 together, and now one is old and illegal, but I don't want to rant about that anymore. The tournament format is just like that across all games. It's not some evil that Games Workshop invented. It's like that in Magic the Gathering. It's like that in, I don't know what other game. I don't play tournament games. Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Age of Sigmar, 40K. Shadespire, and this is going to effectively be the Shadespire unboxing video, comes with some handy-dandy zip bags, the rulebook, which is pretty easy to get through. I appreciate that they have reorganized some of the rules because I have a specific learning style where I'm asking questions about certain mechanics and wanting to practice them out so I can make them or break them. And this does things in a kind of order that I was uncomfortable with until I'd gotten through the whole book and then started back at the beginning and went through it again. We have this lovely flyer that tells you, hey, make sure you buy our other products, specifically the flagship ones that cost the most money. We get this awesome quick start sheet. You can begin here after you put together just these models and take just these cards from the box and then place your models. This will teach you how to move your models and how to read the results of the dice and how to make actions. Then you have this. This is absolutely necessary. This is how you put together the models. And these models, I'm becoming quite the experienced Games Workshop Age of Sigmar model put togetherer because I have put together 7 total of these warbands now. And I have developed the Games Workshop fingers. That is to say, the sharp pokey bits that stab into your finger pads. Did I got a second model assembly guide? I did. There were 2 assembly guides with this. Why? And you will get a board. You fold the board out, you play on this board. You can also play on the opposite side. You will actually get 2 boards. Every core game has 2 boards, and for the longest time, Games Workshop was allowing people to legally bring in their boards from any of the games, and the boards are thematically different, but they're also mechanically different in that they have starting spaces in different spots, as well as blocked off spaces or trapped spaces, harmful spaces, other mechanics spaces in different spots. 2 boards, and you are supposed to open these boards up and place them together however you wish. You would place your board, your opponent would place their board. Your unfinished hexes would become whole hexes, and yeah, that's legal, and so is that, and so is maybe this. You can't do this though, but you could do this, and you could flip this over and do this instead. You can't officially do that now with Emberguard being the new standard because it comes with its new boards and it says this is the new beginning, this is the new legal, everything before this, no good, just use these boards. But I think that that's probably for the best because I did read from some experienced players that the bringing of your own boards to a game could sometimes actually spell your loss. There were people who would bring their board, set it out, and their opponent would be like, wow, you are actually just going to lose, like immediately after I set my board down and pull out it doesn't matter what our armies are going to be, that board is an insta loss. I have not gotten deep enough to experience what this means yet. So if you have any idea what this could possibly entail, do tell me, because I'm very interested to know. What is the board, or what are the boards that are instant losses in a game of Underworlds? I want to know. Next up, the tokens. Shadespire comes with 3 sheets of tokens, and for a blessing, they keep it very simple. You might know that tokens are my least favorite component of any board game because they can really gum up the works and take what could otherwise be a nice flowing session and turn it into constantly referring to the rulebook to figure out what I was supposed to do with this token at this time and what does it mean when it's flipped, and I forgot to put the token on the miniature square. There are only a few categories of token. There's just a lot of each kind, and we have glory points, which are these gold tokens. They can be spent, and when spent, they are flipped over to their empty side. Plenty of wound tokens, which are these red guys. More than what you'll need. And generally, our hexagonal tokens are objective markers. These go onto the boards, if that wasn't obvious by their shape. They are double-sided, and the backs look all the same for a game of Shadespire, while the fronts, or when they're flipped, will have these numbers. This will kind of give you an element of randomness, because you won't know how much an objective is worth until you've landed on it and flipped the token. Finally, we have these statuses, and these are used very frequently throughout the game, so you'll become used to their usage pretty quickly. These are basically just reminders as to what that particular model that you've activated has done, and it lets you know what it can't do for the rest of that round. It's easy, it's eloquent, I like it. We have 3 more things to look at for a typical game or season or whatever you want to call it, Warhammer Underworlds. This specific game came with 3 decks of cards, and they were all in wrap. This one's still wrapped. I haven't opened it yet. You have specific instructions from Games Workshop to help you learn the game, not to open the extra cards just yet. Liberators. Open this when you play your first game. This pack includes fighter cards, an objective deck, and a power deck for the Liberators. You'll open this, and the tutorial will walk you through just using the character cards. Like I said, it won't teach you everything all at once, so the power and objective cards you just set to the side while you learn the actions and activations of your units and get used to damaging each other with dice. The Blood Reavers deck was the same way, and this box has Blood Reavers versus Liberators. Now, if you are getting into the game system and your specific core box allows you to learn the rules without having to use the decks, I strongly, highly encourage you to play through a couple of games, even solo, where you're pitting up miniatures against one another and learn how the dynamics of the dice work, because the dice are very unique. We have no standard pips on these D6s. Every game is going to come with 5 attack dice and 3 defend dice. And these do have different faces, but they basically represent the same kinds of things. Later games also may come with magic dice, which have a different dynamic to them and a different use. Against the beautiful backdrop of my hand, behold the possible die faces on the attack dice in Warhammer Underworlds that you can roll. These faces don't change throughout the games, but the color of the dice do, which means that you can have this fun little collection element, getting these different colors of attack dice or defense dice in order to have a unique loadout of what color dice you want to use with your faction. I think it's really cool. The defense dice are differently colored also. Well done on Games Workshop's part there. The top one here is a critical success. This is just a success, but we'll go over why it's critical here shortly. Generally, fighters in Warhammer Underworlds will either use this Warhammer symbol as a success or this crossed swords symbol, which I believe means fury, as a success. There are 2 of these faces, so that's where you get your 6 faces on the D6, but only 1 of these crossed sword symbols. If your unit counts Warhammers as a success, have at least a 50% chance of rolling a success any given time that you are attacking another fighter. But if it uses crossed swords only, then you have a 33% chance of rolling a successful attack per die. You might think that this means that people who use Warhammers on their fighter cards to attack are advantageous, but what it usually means is the people who use the crossed swords are going to be stronger. The bottom 2 faces are counted as successes if the target has another one of your fighters adjacent to it, threatening it. While this face is a success if you have more than one of the fighters in your warband adjacent to your target, threatening them. Next up, we have our models, and we'll look at our models before we place them onto the hex grid to give examples of successful attacks and defenses. They are finely detailed miniatures, and yes, I did snip all of these guys out of their sprues and push fit them together. They required no glue, and I have been advised to use glue, and I can definitely see how that can be advantageous in some cases, but I don't think it's 100% necessary all the time. So I will avoid using glue for the time being, at the horror of probably many of my viewers who play Underworlds and have moved their models across the board during a game only to have the model become completely unhinged and fall apart during tournament play. Drop your horror stories down below, but these guys were push fit together well enough that I don't see them coming apart anytime soon. We have Garrick's Blood Reavers. The different models in this warband are people who have fallen to the influence of Khorne, and everything they do from this point on is to draw the eye of Khorne and not let him down if his gaze so falls upon this humbled warband of violent, bloodied fighters. One thing I really, really like about Underworlds is here's your sprue, and everything on this sprue, everything confined in this sprue is your warband. No matter how big, no matter how small, you get this entire sprue to yourself. They're always the same size, no matter what. So you are working within a very defined sort of standard, but a warband could definitely be anywhere from I think the smallest warbands are 3. You'll have to correct me if there's a 2-person warband, but I think the smallest ones are 3 and the largest ones are 7. So generally your 7 fighter warbands are going to be very small creatures all together, and it's going to be sort of a swarm tactic versus the strong fighters. Now there were 5 fighters in Garrick's Blood Reavers, but now we're going to move into our opposing warbands, the good guys, Steelheart Liberators. I believe these are 32mm. They could be 35, or they could be 32, and these are just particularly large individuals within the world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The bases are definitely big. These are not going to fit on your puny 1-inch grid squares for your dungeon crawlers. These will fit comfortably in the, I believe, 1.25 inches. We're just going to measure that, actually. Oh, no, it's 2 inches. It's 2 inches. 2-inch hexes. very comfortably within your 2-inch hexes. Yes, no, the bases are ginormous, but the bases are always so decorated, so uniquely sculpted from one another and very immersive with the miniature. And they generally fit very well onto the board on which they are played, or at least the board that is included with the box these guys come in. These 3 Liberators are all very impressive, and they are balanced for play, so you can definitely win a game against 5 of the Blood Reavers if you play these guys right, if you use your objectives wisely. And now for the introduction to combat portion of the video. This is a terrible example of how the game boards might be set up and how your units might be placed, and eventually how you might have 2 opposing units come together in combat. This unit is Ankarad Brightshield, and this unit is Garrick Gorebeard. We haven't gone over how to read the cards yet, but Ankarad rolls 3 dice for attack, and she counts the Warhammer symbol as a success. Garrick only rolls 1 die in defense, and counts the dodge arrow as a defense. We have 2 successes from Ankarad Brightshield, and we have no successes from Gorebeard, so because the amount of successes from Ankarad outweighs the amount of successes from Garrick Gorebeard, the attack will go through. It doesn't matter how many more successes you roll than the enemy in regards to how much of an attack you're going to do. You're going to do the same attack damage no matter what. You just got to hit them. So it's not like a subtractive process wherein the leftover successes will attack. The leftover successes mean you win, and then you apply an attack, and that's that. Now, I mentioned before that you have a greater chance of success per die if you are using a fighter that rolls a Warhammer symbol as a success. All the Liberators are like this, and you can see this from their character cards. Here is the model, here is the artwork of the character, here's the box that they're from, here is the particular warband that they're from. So all of these fighters will have the same warband symbol. All of these fighters will have the same warband symbol, and both warbands will share the Shadespire symbol in the corner. Obviously the name of the fighter, and then you get down to brass tacks. We have the lore off on this side, the weapon name and characteristics for your attacks, and then the unit's movement, defense, and total wounds. You can see that these numbers are all the same for the Liberators. They can all move up to 3 hexes. They all defend using 1 defense die, and they only defend on a shield. Oh yeah, we gotta talk about the defense dice. They're basically just like the attack dice in terms of faces and what the faces mean. We have our successes, our critical successes. We have our support success, and we have our support success. And ragingly, these don't have different names in Shadespire, but this one means that if your target is flanked or adjacent to 2 other fighters from your warband, this counts as a success, and no other time. We also have the shield symbol, of which there are 2 faces with this one, so it's a higher chance of defending when your fighter uses a shield. And the dodge. There's only 1 of these faces on the die, so you technically have a lower chance of defending if your unit rolls a dodge symbol to mitigate an attack. All of Garrick's Blood Reavers can move up to 4 hexes, but they all use the dodge as their success face. So in one-on-one combat, they have a 33% chance of mitigating a single attack die. But they all only roll 1, so kind of just like goblins, if somebody like Ankarad Brightshield comes along and they roll 3 dice, and all 3 of the dice are their success, you might say, well, the Garrick doesn't even have to roll. There's no point in rolling a defense at all. That's where you're wrong, my friend, because that's where critical successes come into play. You see, the game is about more successes than your opponent. But if you roll a critical success, that's on a level of its own. You are actually supposed to count first the number of critical successes that you roll. So when Garrick, who can only succeed in one-on-one combat if he rolls a critical success or a dodge, rolls a single crit success die, and his opponent rolls all successes but none of them are critical successes, well, this is a successful dodge. Now, the reverse is true. If Brightshield rolls even 1 critical success, this is not a tie because Brightshield now has as many critical successes and more successes in general than Gorebeard. This would really be a barbarian versus goblin situation if your fighter rolled more critical successes than your opponent was allowed to roll in dice. Now they would really have no way of defending. There's no point. It's a moot point rolling against this. It's just like if your barbarian rolled 2 skulls against a goblin. There's no point in the goblin defending. The goblin's gonna die. Okay, so that's where that comes into play, but since this is an arena combat game with multiple fighters, if I can get these guys to stop dancing around the board, this situation is way different. The target in this case, Gorebeard, nothing changes for Gorebeard whatsoever, but For all 3 of these liberators that are surrounding Gorebeard, they are now able to not only count this die face as a success, they are able to count this die face as a success. Now let's turn the tables a little bit. Let's say it's Garrick's turn and he's going to attack any of these liberators. He'll be using the white attack dice. He'll be using 2 of them, and successes will be the Warhammer as well as the crit. And if an attack goes through, it's going to inflict 2 wounds on his opponent. That's the one symbol I didn't go over. That's wounds that will be inflicted upon your opponent should your attack succeed. All of these are numbers that really range. It's between 1 and 3 for the Blood Reavers, and between 2 and 3 for the Liberators, but in most cases, you're not going to one-shot your opponent. That is, unless Oberyn the Bold here, who has an attack of 3, or Severin Steelheart, who has an attack of 3, can land a hit on Blooded Seg. That's going to take Seg out in 1 hit. Seg will defend, but if he loses the roll, he's going to die, as would Targor, as would Arnulf, as would Karsus the Chained. All is not lost. I did talk about abilities and deck building, and we'll go over that here in just a second. But first, I wanted to explain the defense dice. Now, you are going to roll only the amount of defense dice on your character card. So if, let's say, this fellow who is Oberyn the Bold and wielding just the most impressive hammer I think I have seen sculpted on any sculpt in any game, is the target of Garrick Gorebeard's next attack, well, Garrick's going to roll his normal dice, and that's going to be 2 dice that use Warhammers as successes, and it goes without saying from this point onward that critical successes will always count as successes as well. This symbol is how far this attack can go. This essentially means that it can only attack adjacent enemies. You will have characters that have longer range weapons, so that's when you'll pay more attention to this, but most of your people are going to be melee, and they're going to attack adjacent spaces only. So in this case, the Blood Drinker Axe can attack any target that is 1 space away or adjacent from its origin. If he can land a hit, he'll inflict 2 damage on the target fighter. But first, we're going to attack. All right, so this is awful. This is a failed attack, and there's no reason to even roll defense. But let's pretend that he rolled 2 critical successes. This is where things could get a little bit worrisome. Actually, 2 critical successes would be a guaranteed hit on any of these 3 targets, since they all only roll 1 die apiece. So that's that example done and dusted. Let's say that he rolled Warhammers instead. 2 Warhammers and no critical successes means that whoever his target is going to have to make sure they roll a critical success. If they can't do that, they're going to get hit. 1 Warhammer means that the target is going to have to either roll a critical success, a shield icon, or now one of these support or double support icons. These will all count as successes because if Garrick is targeting this unit, he's still being threatened by these 2 units, so the defense die support symbol will come into effect, and it will be counted as a successful defense. If he attacks this one, he's still flanked by these 2. He's still adjacent to 2 other liberators. In fact, he's adjacent to 2 of his enemies, no matter which one of these 3 he is attacking. So this is really a great situation for the Liberators to be in. Now, earlier I said all is not lost if your unit appears to be struggling, because if you get into this situation, it probably means you don't have your other fighters in your warband. And that is where this section of the fighter card comes into play. This is the condition by which this fighter will achieve inspiration or become inspired. And if your unit is inspired, and in this case, Garrick Gorebeard will become inspired if at least 3 fighters are out of action, you will flip the card. And now you will note that Garrick Inspired has slightly buffed statistics. He still has the Awakened Axe this time with a range of 1 and rolling 2 dice with Warhammers being the successes, but now this will damage for 3. Instead of having 4 movement squares, rolling a die with a dodge as a success, and 4 wounds, he will have 5, 1, 4. So he really just gets to move an extra square. I kind of wish that they would have replaced the lore here with just like additional lore about this character. I wish that was the case for all of these fighters, but they all have their inspired conditions and they all get their own unique buffs and sometimes additional types of attacks. I didn't go over knockbacks yet, and I did not go over units getting driven back. If a target has been successfully hit, the attacker may choose to drive the target back. They can drive them back 1 hex, and they can drive them back any of the hexes that are away from the attacking figure. So let's say Bright Shield has just attacked Garrick. The attack was successful. Bright Shield can now choose to drive back Garrick. In this position, she can drive Garrick back to this hex, or to this hex. Obviously not to this hex, that's not really a drive back, nor to this hex, that's not a drive back either. If they roll off attack versus defense and it's a tie, this fighter can still drive this unit back 1 hex, but if the defense wins, then that just can't happen. That's a standard rule, and any of the fighters can drive back any of the other fighters, and if you have certain hexes on the board that will incur damage or perhaps death to a unit, then it can be very advantageous to come up to them and try to drive them back into that hex. That's not a thing here in Shadespire, but later on it becomes a thing. Now, some units like Oberyn the Bold have an additional effect under their attack, under their weapon block here, and in this case it is knockback 1. This means that you can perform an additional knocking back of the unit 1 more hex, and it can be 1 additional hex. So you would do the standard fighting roll off attack versus defense, and if it's a tie, then you could drive your opponent back 1. But if this attack is successful, not only can you drive back the unit, you can knock back the unit, and now you're putting some real distance between the units. Now this could end up being a great scenario for the Liberators, especially if you have a couple of other Liberators up here and you're wanting to drive your opponent back to be adjacent to them, or perhaps knock them back to be adjacent to them in this situation. But it's also a big deal because Underworlds is not a game where you roll, move hexes, and then attack. It doesn't play out that way. You take it in turns with your opponent to activate your models. You activate a fighter. You can activate 1 fighter on your turn. That's basically your action, and then it's your opponent's turn to activate a fighter. Once you have both activated fighters 4 times, and it can be the same fighter if you want all 4 times, it can be 4 of your different fighters in your warband of 5, and you just won't be able to do anything with your 5th one. It can be activate this one once, activate this one once, activate this one once, activate this one once. Whatever your 4 activations are throughout the course of a single round, that is a round. That's done. So just to play out exactly what this would look like and explain it in pictures instead of just words, let us begin. It's the first round. This is not how a round would be set up at all, by the way. But anyways, it's the first round. It's going to be Garrick's turn, or rather the Blood Reaver's turn. I'm going to activate this model by moving him. Now that's it. That's the activation. You can move. That's one of your actions. That's a move action. Now it's the Liberator's turn, and this Liberator is going to make an attack action, because why wouldn't they? So they roll off, and then the game continues. Now it's the Blood Reavers. This Blood Reaver is going to attack. Now it's the Liberator's turn. This Liberator is going to attack. Let's say that in this round, this unit is now dead. Blood Reaver's turn, we're going to move again, but this time we're going to do an action called a charge action, which does allow you to move and then attack in the same turn. The only problem with doing that is if you do it, that model now cannot perform any other actions for the rest of this round. So if you are making a charge action, you are effectively taking advantage of closing the distance and then attacking a model that is within your range, but you are doing so at the cost of rendering that fighter useless for the rest of the round. You could do this late in a round and then it would be fine, but do it early enough in a round and that unit will now be a sitting duck. By the way, this is where the status tokens come into play. These guys let you know that you have made a charge action. You would punch this out and place it on your model to make sure that you remember that that model made a charge action and is therefore useless for the rest of the round. And the move tokens are here to let you know that when you place them near your fighter as a reminder, which I can't stand this sort of thing. I realize there's no other way to do it. It's a necessary evil, but my goodness. Maybe we can place this on our cards, that they cannot make another move action or a charge action in that action phase. You also can't you can't move through any other model. You have to go around them. We've gone over move, we've gone over attack, which is really making an action printed on a fighter card or upgrade, such as an attack action with a fighter. That's the official definition of that particular action. And in this case, it would be using the Sigmarite Grand Hammer with the knockback of 1, which is printed on the card. But obviously, you can make actions that are not necessarily attacks if they are printed on the cards. So if Oberyn the Bold becomes inspired, which is a very, very easy thing to do because his inspiration condition is this fighter rolls a shield or a critical success when the target of an attack. Bam, inspired. He now has a second action that he can perform, not as in you can do both in the same turn, but you can choose which one to do. And this is the overhead strike, and it actually is the same thing as the Sigmarite Grand Hammer, but it does not have a knockback. Instead, it has a cleave. And what cleave does is it effectively renders the shield face of a defense die useless. If your unit is one that uses dodge, then this will actually mean nothing. But there are certain things in the game that will allow you to defend using both the shields and the dodge icons, as of course the critical successes. And the cleave keyword just takes out the possibility of using shield at all. Another action that you can do with your fighters, another activation, is you can make a guard action, or better said, put a fighter on guard. And putting a fighter on guard means that they are now going to be staying in that spot, but if they are attacked, they can use both the dodge and shields on their dice. Their defense dice now have a 66% chance of success. And if the attacker has, say the attacker in this case is, again, Bright Shield. If the attacker has fighters from the opposing warband surrounding her, then you guessed it, the support and double support icon faces will count as successes. So this does again lead to conditions where the defense die can actually be 100% chance of success when you roll it. You just need to now worry about rolling more critical successes than your attackers. But yeah, again, in this instance, I was just talking about cleaves. The cleaves would take the shields away from that. So we're no longer at 100%. We're now at a 5/6, 83.3 repeating chance of success there. What have we covered? We can move, we can charge, we can put a fighter on guard, we can just attack with our card actions, we can draw a power card from the top of the power deck, we can discard an objective card and draw an objective card from the top of the objective deck, or we can pass and do nothing. We haven't really gone into the cards and the decks. I will go over them very shortly, but I don't want to get into them too deeply because deck building is its own thing and it's gone over a few iterations. Just know that you have an objective deck and a power deck. And the power deck is going to consist of two different types of cards, ploys and upgrades, and the objective deck is going to say what objectives you can have. Now you draw these at random, so you're going to build your hand of 8 cards using 3 of the objectives in the objective decks and 5 of the powers in the power deck. When you are building your deck, no more than half of the power deck can be ploy cards. It has to be exactly half or more of upgrade cards. But here's our hand. Healing Potion. It tells you that it's a ploy with the symbol in the upper left. The gears are upgrades, the swords are ploys. Those are the 2 categories. The gold-backed cards here are the objective cards. Each player has an objective deck made of 12 objective cards. If you are deck building and you're putting together your decks, you can have exactly 12 objective cards, and no 2 may be the same. Perhaps, obviously, each card is going to describe a condition for an objective, and if that objective is met, you score the relevant amount of glory points. Now, I haven't been talking about this at all, but the entire point of this game is not to crush all of your enemies, although that will definitely net you a greater chance of winning. It is to get more glory points by the end of the 3rd round. It's only played in 3 rounds. 3 rounds of 4 activations per side. At the end of 3 rounds, the game is over. That's it. You count your glory points, your glory tokens, and whoever has more wins, and that's that. So it's in your best interest to utilize your models and play to a playstyle that gets you the most glory points for your games. If you have a very violent warband, they're probably going to have more glory points based on killing your enemies. But some of your warbands are going to have glory points based on doing other things, like, let's check this one out. This is one of Garrick's Blood Reaver's objective cards called A Worthy Skull. He killed well, he died well. Khorne shall savor this offering. You can score this in an end phase if your warband took an enemy leader out of action in the preceding action phase. Blood for the Blood God is a card you can score immediately if 3 or more of your fighters made a charge action in this phase. It Begins is a card that can be scored in the end phase if at least 1 fighter from each warband is out of action. Khorne Cares Not is an objective card that can be scored in an end phase if 5 or more fighters are out of action in a 2-player game. In a 3-player game, this is increased to 7 or more. In a 4-player game, this is increased to 9 or more. And yes, this game can be 3 to 4 players also. And yes, the 3rd and 4th player get to bring their own boards and set them on the table. You can have a pretty mighty arena combat. The rest of the cards at this point are irrelevant. What we have is what we have. We can try to score these objectives during our current round or during specific action phases, and we can use these ploys. We can also identify who specifically these cards can be used for. These are universal cards. Anybody can use these. Even though there are pictures of the Blood Reavers on them, they're not going to limit you on who is able to use these cards. Any warband, any member of any warband should be able to use these cards. You do have a couple of cards that tell you that there are not just specific warbands, but specific units. Like Berserk Charge here, this is restricted to just Psych. Blooded Psych is the only person who can use this power card. If you draw this card and you look at your board and Psych has been dead for a long time, the flies are buzzing around his bloodied corpse, Khorne is smiling upon the great sacrifice he has made, well, you know that this card's useless and you can't use it. On the other hand, if you draw Blood Slick and you have Garrick still on the board, you know that you can use this card on him to give him +1 defense. Here's our Whirlwind. I can't believe we have a Whirlwind. Deadly Spin. Targets all adjacent enemy fighters. Roll for each. This is restricted to Targor. And now you're kind of seeing how even if a warband's stats look like absolute garbage, or the number of people in that warband could make it look like it's absolute garbage, the power deck can actually be tailored to make a great warband. A lot of your objectives are actually going to be pretty bog standard. Hold objective 1 is an objective. Hold objective 2, hold objective 4, 3, 5, and you know which objectives are 1 through 5 because they're going to have the numbers printed on the front side of that token. They'll all go onto the board face down. When you flip them, that's objective 9, which you won't use this one unless you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, but you can clearly see from the objective tokens which ones are objective 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, I did want to show you something that was relevant earlier. The story of Shadespire is really, really cool, and it's something I kind of wish I went over a little bit earlier. We have the story of the Mirrored City and how this entire Underworlds theme came into play. It is very Nagash themed. Nagash is the reason for the Mirrored City, and Whispers in Shadow is giving us the lore of the specific warbands who are coming into Shadespire here. On these 2 pages, we get a glimpse of all of the warbands that are going to be available for Shadespire, and of course these are all in the distant past now. These are the warbands that are available separately if you buy them secondhand, or if you buy them new in box, but it's not going to be from your local retailer at this point. All of these are Shadespire warbands, and some of them have been updated using newer releases of warbands, and that is where the Grand Alliance packs come in, and this is really what made me very obsessed with the warband collection aspect of Warhammer Underworlds. We have these Grand Alliance boxes, so named for their theming of the warbands included. You either have Destruction warbands, which is going to be, in this case, Brutes and Bandits, which gives you your Ogre Pirate with all of his animal buddies, or your Hobgrots and Grots, and your Orcs, and your fun little Mage Goblins. So kind of grossly oversimplifying it, a Goblin Warband, a Hobgoblin Warband, an Orc Warband, an Ogre Warband. That's not exactly what's going on here, but that's the diversity that they've given. And with this set, which I've put together, and I actually showed off all of these models in a separate video, you are getting all of these character cards. And yeah, the character cards, sadly, they look a lot different now. They took away the awesome artwork, and they kind of rearranged the iconography on the cards, but everything should be up to a contemporary standard now where this all looks the same, hopefully. Then we've got these larger War Scroll kind of cards that give you quests. They introduce more mechanics, or at least they did when this warband was introduced, and this is, I think, a Gloom Spite. No, these are the Gloom Spite Gids. No, I'm sorry. This is Grincrack's Loon Court. That's the Goblin warband. And the sharp-eyed among you will note that these are all different colors, and that is another impressive thing that Games Workshop has done with this series. Every single warband is a different color. There are like 60, 70 warbands now total, and they are all different colors. They might be just shades apart from one another at this point, but they're still distinctive enough, and I think that that is really cool, and it actually makes me not want to paint any of them ever. I want to keep their colors. I'm sorry. I don't want to sleeve my cards, and I don't want to paint my minis. Anyways, there is a Destruction warband, there is an Undead warband, there is a Heroes warband, and there is a Chaos warband. And pre-Emberguard, pre-most contemporary version of the game, we just had one Grand Alliance warband box, bringing all of these warbands, some of which were from previous core sets, some of which were expansions, warbands added on to different seasons in the past, bringing them into the contemporary, giving Games Workshop a chance to sell them again and continue to make money off of these awesome sculpts. After Emberguard, they came out with another Undead, another Destruction, another Chaos, and another Heroes Grand Alliance set of each, so 4 warbands per box, They are, in my opinion, very much worth it. They're really cool. Even if you don't end up playing Warhammer Underworlds or using them for Underworlds, the collection of miniatures are just super awesome looking. They're awesome to have, and yeah, they'll basically go into whatever dungeon crawler you want, as long as you don't mind them encroaching onto the spaces. Arena Mortis comes after Beast Grave, but it doesn't come with any units or fighters. It just comes with cards that you can use with older warbands. It comes with tokens, it does come with boards, and it comes with a new way to play Underworlds, which again is probably illegal now in tournament consideration, but this is still a definitely worth it way to play your current games at home with friends, the way that it should be played. In a future video, I will show you more of all of this stuff, future videos. I'll really go over all of this stuff in different ways, and we'll see if some of it hero quests, we'll see if it Warhammer quests, because the newest Warhammer Quest, Darkwater, is actually hex based, and there's going to be a lot of people getting this stuff secondhand and getting into it and using it for their Warhammer Quest stuff, and vice versa, I would say. I could see people playing games of Underworlds using the Warhammer Quest Darkwater book once it is released and out in the wild, because that uses a hex grid system as well, and I would say that the miniatures are probably all this size, nice and massive and ready to move around the board and hit things. Will it play the same? No, it's already demonstrably not got the same rule set at all, but you could definitely use the boards. And you can homebrew your own stuff. You could 100% do that. We'll explore that in the future as well. And so that is kind of Warhammer Underworlds in a large nutshell. This video went on for quite a while, but it took a little bit of spoon gathering to kind of bring it all together as an introduction to Warhammer Underworlds, an unboxing and overview of Shadespire in particular, and a bit of a demonstration of the game and how to play. It's a humble how to play, but you know, it's honest work. And now that I have shown you this, I can kind of reformat things the way that I would like them to be in my boxes, because that's a thing that I do. I keep things presented a certain way until I've shown you, and then I go on to store them how I wanted to store them. I can throw away my sprues. I can get rid of my token skeletons after punching all of the tokens out, and I can store all of my redundant tokens in a separate place, because even though I bought multiples of game systems, I don't need to have multiples of glory tokens or wound tokens, right? Right. So Warhammer Underworlds as a dungeon crawler, we'll explore some of that as well. It's my dream to get together a dungeon crawl system to use this on, so it's not just constantly fighting, but also fighting and avoiding traps and getting treasure and making upgrades that are permanent and so on. In the meantime, brave heroes, I thank you very much for your kind attention in this particularly long and wordy video. If you have been playing Underworlds, did I present it well? Did I do a good job? Would you like to see the specific unboxes of games like Nethermaze, and would you like to see in detail what the boards and tokens of these games look like? I'll be showing some of that stuff off anyway, but let me know what you thought in the comments below. Until next time, brave adventurers, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I bid you adieu for now, so onward.